Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a book which has come to us from CLARITAX publications. They're a specialist publication company, and what they produce are excellent books on taxation which are directly relevant to lawyers. We've reviewed a number of their books in the past. There are some excellent videos available to explain what the books are, and what I'm looking at this morning is a 2-volume set which is entitled Employee Benefits and Expenses. The first volume has the principles in an A to Z structure, and it's then followed by major benefits in the second volume, and it's in its second edition. So it's a popular work. It's been written by Chidell and Dave Jennings, and it's part of the CLARITAX Books publications, linked with MAZARS. Now, my wife Elizabeth and I have had a chat about the 2 volumes, and we thought we'd give it a review title: a clear 2-volume explanation of the rules on employee benefits and expenses in an easy to read format for advisors. And that's what you get with CLARITAX. Let's have a look at the books first of all. They are easy to read. They're heavy. They're paperbacks. They're heavy. The first one runs to under 600 pages, 550 odd pages. There's the front, the spine, and then the back. I open it up. It's the second edition, brown cover. There is no index in the volume 1. Okay. There's the front of it. Front page there. And then you get statement about CLARITAX and the books they've actually published, the other books in this series, about the author's detail. Then you've got about the publisher, CLARITAX Books. Then you go straight into a preface which explains the changes since the first edition. There have been quite a lot of them, and it gives you the actual reference pages for them. That goes on. Then there's some abbreviations, extremely helpful to have abbreviations. Then the table of contents. You can see for this volume 1 goes up to 7 chapters, and that chapter 7 starts with the A to Z of benefits and expenses. Very, very helpful. Then volume 2 is a very short bit because we get on to volume 2 in a minute. Then we get into the introduction itself. You see paragraph numbering. There are footnotes, not too many of them. You just open it up in the middle, you'll see again. You do have some shaded areas, box areas, which are examples. Very helpful indeed when you're trying to advise people and also trying to understand some of the more difficult areas. For instance, there's one here on school fees and season tickets under S. So you see, then from that volume, we run through to volume 2, which is called Major Benefits. Again, there's the front, the side, and the back. It's not quite as big. It's just under. It's 500 pages. There's the full index, which is at the back. I'll talk about that in a minute. We'll just go to the front again. This is volume 2, Major Benefits. Again, the same stuff. You've got the same information at the front about CLARITAX Books. Then you've got about the authors. Then you've got the publisher. Then we get in to, again, abbreviations, very useful to have. Then you've got volume 2. Volume 1 is very quickly referred to with the first 7 chapters, and then chapter 8 starts there for volume 2, and deals with company cars. So we start straight off with company cars, and then we run all the way through to the end. Now what we have at the back is a different structure. It's more to do with the way in which some of the European publications approach matters. We have a table of primary legislation at the back, then secondary legislation, that's the statutory instruments. Then there is a little bit, the statutory instruments are there. Then after that you have a small number of cases, not that many, and then after that you've got the general index, which is right at the back. And as I say, you've got a number of appendices as well, which are listed right at the back of the book. And the appendices are, of course, listed here as well, just so you've got some idea. There are, in fact, 11 appendices, and they start off there. So, in fact, it's that page and that page, to give you an idea of what you're looking for. It's tax data, PAYE, a whole range of particular quite detailed information. These books are excellent. They're very easy to read, which one would find a bit surprising because an awful lot of tax stuff is really difficult to follow. It makes it a very difficult task to try to understand sometimes what is actually being said about a particular type of tax. It's far too complicated. They always promise that politicians are going to do something about it, never do, make it even worse generally speaking, because it gets more and more complex as the years go by. The thing is, we need this sort of easy to read, available information as practitioners and advisors. Without it, we couldn't do our jobs properly. But I'd like to thank Ray Chidell in particular for being the moving person behind all of these publications, which are of great assistance to all of us. This is what we say about the 2-volume set anyway. Ray Chidell and Dave Jennings have compiled an excellent 2-volume work on employee benefits and expenses, which offers user-friendly and practical guidance to reflect the rapidly changing tax rules. They review the general underlying principles in the first volume as an A to Z of benefits and expenses from page 110 in chapter 7 onwards, starting with accommodation, supplies and services, and ending with workplace nurseries. So it runs all the way through. And in the second volume, they cover the major benefits in kind, including a detailed chapter on company cars, which starts it off, which we think will be of considerable interest to quite a lot of people. Chidell and Jennings have also added extended coverage of PAYE compliance reviews and a new chapter on penalties for this splendid second edition. And a general index, as I've indicated, can be found at the back of Volume 2, together with a list of cases, statutes, and there are 11 appendices. Therefore, if you're acting as a tax specialist, either an accountant or a lawyer or counsel advising on tax, you're probably more than familiar already with the ever-growing stable of books on tax advice from CLARITAX. They play a leading role today in these specialist and very readable publications. We're very grateful to them. If you've not discovered CLARITAX, then you've got a real discovery which is to be made. In the words of the publishers, CLARITAX books complement what is on offer from the larger tax publishers. And if you mark our words, these books, including its title here, contain the most accessible and certainly businesslike advice on tax you're likely to encounter. As I've said, they're readable because what you've got here is the sort of question you're going to ask when you're looking at a particular problem and trying to fathom what it is you've got to do. CLARITAX is a rather good name, we think, for these concise and very handy volumes, for they really do clarify in plain, precise language all the pertinent information you'll need to know across a range of highly specific areas in tax. Typically, says CLARITAX, our books cover niche topics in greater detail, or they take a more practical approach to particular tax issues, and we'd certainly agree with that. And so it is then with this latest title as a second edition in 2 parts on employee benefits and expenses, an excellent area for us to have information on. The first edition was published in June 2014, and as the authors say, the amount that has changed in relation to employee benefits and expenses since that time is extraordinary. And so we're very grateful to have this quite quickly on the market. Well, we must of course be prepared for further changes since May 2015 and the general election, because this work is relevant to all the 25 million employees in the UK at the present time, and a lot of them would find it very helpful to at least know of the existence of this book and what it's advising. The law is as stated on the 31st of March 2015, and it reflects the budget of March 2015 and the first Finance Act of 2015. Since publication, of course, we had the general election on the 7th of May 2015, and it returned a Conservative majority government who will be delivering a second emergency budget on the 8th of July 2015. So there could well be further imminent change on the horizon. I'm mentioning that now because I'm recording this in May 2015, just after the election. Here's the first volume again, spine and then the back. Just opening it in the centre, you see You see the numbering. You've got useful numbering. It's quite easy to follow quite quickly. When you have the actual letter, like for instance F for flower and so forth, and then L, local exchange and trading system, and so on. So it's really quite simple to follow. And do remember, as I've said with volume 2, that you have the index at the back. There's no index in volume 1, so it's really like 2 books rolled into one. It's just that as they're quite heavy, the paper they use is very nice indeed. The quality of the paper doesn't rip and tear. It's nice. It's easy on the eye, if I can put it that way. Then at the front, as I say again, you've got the usual stuff here. You do have these boxed examples. I mentioned it before. It's worth mentioning. There's very little in the way of footnoting. There's just a little bit, but that's not what this is about. It is actually, the point about it is it easy to navigate? Yes, it is. And you can see that from the 2 books. Anyway, can I thank Ray and Dave very much for producing these books. They're first class for us. They're just what we need. And without them, we would have a much more difficult task. So thank you very much indeed, and keep up the good work. Bye-bye.